The corroded drilling platform groaned and trembled as it bored into the planet's surface, spewing dust and fragments. Ethan Cross wiped sweat from his forehead, squinting against the brutal glare of Helios 9's triple suns. Just another soul-crushing shift in this forsaken wasteland. At 20, Ethan was already a seasoned miner, hardened by years laboring alongside his father, Marcus, in the unforgiving quarries. Their days were an endless cycle of brutal work, tasteless ration packs, and restless sleep in cramped dormitories, a far cry from the adventurous life Ethan had dreamed of as a boy, exploring uncharted territories and discovering alien artifacts. But Helios 9 had a way of crushing dreams. The only thing flourishing here was resentment. Ethan was jolted from his thoughts by a sudden tremor, the ground quaking beneath his boots. He frowned, glancing at the sensor displays. Seismic activity was common in the unstable crust, but this felt different, stronger. "Dad, you feel that?" he called over the comm. Static crackled in his ear. "Yeah, I'm reading it too," Marcus replied, his voice tense. "Better shut down operations. Head back to—" A deafening explosion cut him off. Ethan whirled around to see a sphere of flame erupt on the horizon, a column of smoke rising from the distant ridges. "What the hell?" he breathed. "Ethan? Ethan!" His father's panicked voice filled the comm. "Get back to base immediately, that's an order!" But Ethan was already moving, his heart pounding as he raced toward the impact site. Mining instinct screamed at him to retreat. This was no accident. Something had come down hard and fast, something not of this world. As he crested the ridge, Ethan skidded to a halt, his jaw dropping. A sleek silver craft lay half-buried in the dirt, scorched and smoking. Definitely not one of the bulky mining shuttles. This was something else entirely. Heart in his throat, Ethan approached the wreckage cautiously. The ship was small, barely bigger than an escape pod. Twisted metal and sparking circuitry littered the ground. But what caught Ethan's attention was the figure slumped over the controls, unmoving. Swallowing hard, Ethan climbed through the shattered cockpit. Up close, he could see that the pilot wasn't human. Delicate azure skin, pointed ears, a cascade of silver hair, an alien, a real, honest-to-God alien, and she was still breathing. "Hang on," Ethan muttered, checking for a pulse. It thrummed beneath his fingers, fast and thready. "I've got you." Gritting his teeth, he worked to free her from the twisted restraints, grunting with effort as he lifted her slight form. She weighed hardly anything, all lean muscle and delicate bones. Cradling her close, Ethan staggered from the wreckage, his mind reeling. An alien here on Helios 9? It defied belief. But the proof was lying broken in his arms, her blood staining his mining suit a vivid crimson. Ethan knew he should report this, turn her over to the authorities. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of his boyhood dreams, whispering of wonders beyond the stars. Maybe it was simple human decency, unable to abandon an injured creature, no matter how strange. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the flicker of hope kindling in his chest, the desperate, reckless hope that this could be his ticket out of here, that this alien girl could be the key to a life beyond the mines. Jaw clenched with determination, Ethan began the long trek back to base, the alien a barely there weight in his arms. He didn't know what the hell he was doing, didn't know what would happen when she woke up or how he could possibly keep her hidden. All he knew was that for the first time in his miserable life on Helios 9, something had changed. The universe had come crashing down at his feet. And damn if Ethan Cross wasn't going to hold on tight. The alien didn't stir as Ethan smuggled her into the barracks, his heart pounding with every furtive glance and whispered prayer. By some miracle, he made it to his cramped quarters unseen, laying her gently on the narrow bunk. In the harsh light, her injuries looked even worse. Deep lacerations marred her delicate features, vivid bruises blooming across her skin. Her flight suit was torn and stained, revealing the lean lines of her body. Ethan tried not to stare, a flush creeping up his neck. Alien or not, she was undeniably beautiful. Shaking himself, he gathered what meager medical supplies he had, cleaning and dressing her wounds as best he could. All the while, his mind raced with unanswered questions. Who was she? Where had she come from? And what the hell was he going to do now? As if in answer, a low moan escaped her lips. Ethan froze, hardly daring to breathe as her eyes fluttered open. They were a startling shade of violet, flecked with silver, utterly inhuman. Where? She rasped, her voice like crushed velvet. You're safe, Ethan said quickly. I found your ship. You crashed. Her eyes widened, darting around the room in panic. My ship! The Astra! I have to warn them! She tried to sit up, only to cry out in pain, clutching her side. Whoa! Easy! Ethan caught her shoulders, easing her back down. You're hurt! You need to rest. She stared up at him, chest heaving. You're human? Last I checked, Ethan said wryly. I'm Ethan, Ethan Cross. Sarah, she whispered. My name is Sarah. Sarah, Ethan repeated, something in his chest warming at the sound. I know you must be scared and confused, but I promise I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help. Her brow furrowed, suspicion warring with desperation in her eyes. Why? Why would a human help me? Because it's the right thing to do, Ethan said simply. Then, softer, and because maybe, just maybe, you can help me too. Sarah held his gaze for a long moment, searching. Finally, she gave a small nod. All right, Ethan Cross, I will trust you, for now. Relief coursed through him. Thank you. Now rest. We'll figure this out, okay? Her eyes were already drifting shut, exhaustion pulling her under. Okay, she breathed, then so soft he almost missed it. Thank you. Something twisted in Ethan's chest, fierce and protective. He reached out, brushing a lock of silver hair from her brow. You're welcome, he murmured to Sarah. As she slipped into sleep, Ethan sat back on his heels, mind whirling. What the hell had he gotten himself into? Harboring an alien fugitive, lying to everyone he knew? It was insane. It was dangerous. It was the most alive he'd felt in years. The days bled together as Sarah recovered, hidden away in Ethan's quarters. He smuggled food and medical supplies, tending to her wounds and shielding her from prying eyes. All the while, they talked, trading stories of their worlds, their lives, their dreams. Ethan learned that Sarah was a scout for the Nexus Coalition, an interstellar alliance dedicated to preserving life and culture across the galaxy. Her ship had been ambushed by marauders, forcing her to flee to the nearest habitable planet, Helios 9. I never meant to bring trouble to your world, she told him, her eyes haunted, but I couldn't lead them to the Nexus. I had to protect them. I get it, Ethan assured her. You did what you had to do. What any of us would have done. As Sarah grew stronger, so too did the bond between them. Ethan found himself drawn to her quiet strength, her keen intellect, her dry humor. She was unlike anyone he'd ever known. Fierce and brilliant and achingly lonely, just like him. Tell me of Earth, she asked one night as they sat shoulder to shoulder on the narrow bunk. I've heard stories, but never from a human. Ethan's eyes took on a faraway look as he gathered his thoughts. It's a world of contrasts, he began, his voice soft with memory. Towering cities that seem to scrape the very sky, all glass and steel and gleaming lights, but also vast wildernesses, untamed and pristine. Lush green forests that stretch for miles, filled with life and secrets. Majestic mountain ranges, their peaks forever capped in snow, like wise old sentinels watching over the land. Sirah listened, captivated, as he painted a picture of his distant homeworld. And the oceans? She prompted gently. A smile tugged at Ethan's lips. The oceans, they're like nothing you've ever seen. So blue it hurts to look at, stretching out to the horizon and beyond. And so deep, so full of mystery and wonder. As a kid, I used to dream about what might be lurking down there in the depths. Ancient creatures, hidden cities, forgotten treasures. He trailed off, his expression turning pensive. But for all its beauty, Earth can be a brutal place too. The elements are harsh, unforgiving, storms that can level cities, quakes that can split the very ground, and the people. He shook his head. We're a complicated bunch, capable of such great kindness, such breathtaking ingenuity, but also such terrible cruelty, such senseless destruction. Sarah placed a gentle hand on his arm, sensing the old pain in his words. But you endured, she said softly. Your people, your world, you survived. Ethan met her gaze, something fierce and proud kindling in his eyes. Yeah, we did. Because that's the thing about Earth, about humans. We're resilient, unbreakable. The world might knock us down, might beat us to our knees, but we always get back up. We adapt. We overcome. It's in our blood, our bones, the very stuff of our souls. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Earth forged us in the crucible of adversity, shaped us into something strong, something defiant, something that refuses to quit, no matter the odds. Sarah studied him, her violet eyes glinting in the dim light. You are a rare creature, Ethan Cross, strong yet gentle, fierce yet kind. I am glad it was you who found me. Ethan's heart stuttered in his chest. I'm glad too, Sarah. But before he could finish, the door to his quarters burst open. Ethan! Ethan leapt to his feet, shielding Sarah with his body as a figure filled the doorway. Dad! Marcus Cross stared at his son, his face a mask of shock and anger. I knew you were hiding something, he growled, but this? An alien? Have you lost your goddamn mind? Dad, please, Ethan begged. It's not what you think. She's not a threat. Not a threat? Marcus barked a harsh laugh. Wake up, boy. You think the company will care about that when they find her? You think they won't shoot first and ask questions never? Ethan paled, his blood running cold. He knew his father was right. The mining corporation that ran Helios 9 was ruthless, brutal. They'd kill Sarah without a second thought, and probably him too, for harboring her. But he couldn't let that happen. Wouldn't. Not after everything. Then we won't let them find her, Ethan said, his voice hard. We'll get her out of here. Smuggle her off-world. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Marcus demanded. Ethan met his father's gaze unflinching. The supply transport. It's leaving for the orbital station tomorrow. We can sneak Sarah on board. Get her to a ship. Marcus stared at his son, something like pride warring with fear in his eyes. You're really serious about this, aren't you? You're willing to risk everything for her. Ethan glanced back at Sarah, seeing the trust, the hope, the love shining in her violet eyes. And he knew with bone-deep certainty that there was nothing he wouldn't risk for her, nothing he wouldn't do to keep her safe. Yes, he said simply. I am. Marcus sighed, scrubbing a hand over his weathered face. All right then, let's get to work. We've got a jailbreak to plan. The supply transport loomed before them, a hulking beast of metal and gears. Ethan's heart pounded as he led Sarah through the shadows of the loading bay, his father keeping watch at the door. This was it, their one shot at freedom, at a future beyond the mines and the misery of Helios 9. Stay close, Ethan murmured, his hand finding Sarah's in the darkness. And if anything goes wrong, if we get separated... We won't, Sarah said fiercely, her fingers tightening around his. I'm not leaving you, Ethan Cross. Not now. Not ever. Ethan swallowed hard, emotion threatening to choke him. In the short time he'd known Sarah, she'd become his everything, his reason to fight, to hope, to dream of a life beyond the stars. And he knew with a certainty that rang in his bones that he would follow her anywhere, face any danger, just to stay by her side. They crept up the loading ramp, the transport's cavernous hold yawning before them. Towering stacks of crates and barrels lined the walls, casting eerie shadows in the dim light. Ethan led Sarah to a small nook behind a particularly large stack, wedging them into the tight space. "We'll be safe here," he whispered, pulling a tarp over their hiding spot. "Once we reach the orbital station, we'll find a ship heading off-world. Start a new life somewhere far away from here." Sarah leaned into him, her warmth seeping through his shirt. "A new life," she echoed softly. "With you." Ethan's heart stuttered, hope and longing and fear, all tangling together in his chest. "Sarah, I—" But before he could finish, the transport engines roared to life, the deck shuddering beneath them. Ethan instinctively wrapped his arms around Sarah, holding her close as the ship lifted off, pressing them back into the crates. Higher and higher they climbed, the gravity of Helios 9 falling away until they were weightless, suspended in the vast emptiness of space. Ethan had never left the planet's surface before, had never known the strange, exhilarating terror of the void. But with Sarah in his arms, her heart beating against his, he found he wasn't afraid. For the first time in his life, he felt truly free. "Ethan," Sarah breathed, wonder and starlight in her eyes, "we did it. We're really doing this." Ethan cupped her face, marveling at the strength, the beauty, the sheer force of will that seemed to radiate from her very skin. "Yeah, we are. Together." And then he was kissing her, pouring all the fear and hope and desperate, reckless love into the press of his lips against hers. Sarah responded instantly, her hands fisting in his shirt, her mouth opening under his with a soft moan. They clung to each other in the darkness of the cargo hold, two lost souls who had found home in each other's arms. But their moment of peace was shattered by a sudden, bone-jarring impact. The transport lurched, alarms blaring, red light flooding the hold. Ethan and Sarah were thrown from their hiding place, tumbling across the deck in a tangle of limbs. "What's happening?" Sarah cried, fear sharpening her voice. Ethan staggered to his feet, pulling her up with him. "I don't know, but we have to—" The words died in his throat as a new sound reached his ears. The unmistakable whine of laser drills cutting through metal. His blood ran cold, dread seizing his heart in an icy fist. "Raiders," he whispered. "They're boarding the transport." Sarah's eyes widened, her hand finding his in the chaos. "Ethan, if they find us—" "They won't," Ethan said grimly. "I won't let them." He cast about desperately, his gaze landing on a rack of mining tools along the wall. Plasma cutters, fusion welders, hydraulic jacks. Weapons in the right hands, in his hands. Jaw clenched, Ethan grabbed a plasma cutter, the weight familiar and reassuring in his grip. He'd used these tools all his life, had honed his strength and skill in the mines. Now he would use them to fight, to protect the girl he loved, the future he dreamed of. He turned to Sarah, saw the fear and determination warring in her violet eyes. "Stay behind me," he told her, his voice rough with emotion. "And if I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back." Sarah shook her head fiercely, her hand tightening around his. "I'm not leaving you," she repeated, steel in her voice. "We're in this together, Ethan Cross. No matter what." Ethan's heart swelled, love and pride and terror all surging through his veins. He knew he should argue, should try to keep her safe. But looking into her eyes, he saw a strength to match his own. An unbreakable will forged in the crucible of the stars. She was a survivor, just like him. And together they would face this. Together, they would fight for their lives, their love, for the future that beckoned bright and bold and beautiful beyond the void. The raiders burst through the airlock, weapons drawn, faces twisted with greed and malice. Ethan met them head-on, plasma cutter blazing, a battle cry tearing from his throat. Beside him, Sarah wielded a fusion welder like a sword, her movements swift and deadly. They fought like demons, like avenging angels, the tools of their trade transformed into instruments of war. Ethan lost himself in the rhythm of battle, his world narrowing to the flash of plasma, the smell of seared metal, the pounding of his heart in his ears. Again and again the raiders came, and again Ethan and Sarah beat them back. They were a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable, the stuff of legend, of stories whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy, the miner and the alien, the lovers who fought the stars themselves and won. But even the mightiest warriors can fall. Even the brightest stars can be snuffed out. It happened in an instant, a flash of searing pain, a cry wrenched from Ethan's throat, a raider's blade slipping past his guard, finding the vulnerable flesh beneath. He fell to his knees, the plasma cutter slipping from his nerveless fingers. Through a haze of agony, he saw Sarah scream his name, saw her throw herself at the raider with a fury that could shatter worlds. But it was too late. The damage was done, the wound too deep. Ethan felt his strength bleeding out onto the cold metal deck, his vision dimming at the edges. "Sarah," he whispered, reaching for her with the last of his fading strength. "Sarah, I—" But the words wouldn't come, swallowed by the rising tide of darkness. The last thing Ethan saw was Sarah's face, streaked with tears and blood, her violet eyes blazing with love and despair. And then, nothing. Only the void, cold and vast and endless. But even in the darkness, even in the silence of eternity, Ethan held on to one shining truth, one unshakable belief. He had loved, he had fought, he had lived, and for a miner's son from the dust of Helios 9, that was enough. That was everything. Pain, blinding, searing, all-consuming. It was the first thing Ethan knew as he clawed his way back to consciousness. His body a leaden weight, his mind a shattered maze of half-formed thoughts and fractured memories. Where was he? What had happened? The questions chased themselves around his skull, elusive and taunting. He tried to move, to speak, but his limbs wouldn't obey, his tongue thick and useless in his mouth. "Ethan? Ethan, can you hear me?" That voice. He knew that voice. Would know it anywhere. It cut through the fog in his brain. A lifeline thrown to a drowning man. "Sarah." With a titanic effort, Ethan forced his eyes open, blinking against the harsh white light that assaulted his senses. Slowly, painfully, the world swam into focus. Sterile walls, beeping machines, the antiseptic smell of a medbay. And there, hovering over him like an angel, her violet eyes bright with unshed tears. Sarah. "Hey," Ethan croaked, his voice a rusted hinge. "You're a sight for sore eyes." A sob tore from Sarah's throat, her hands coming up to cradle his face with infinite tenderness. "Ethan. Oh, Ethan, I thought I'd lost you." Memories came flooding back, jagged shards that cut and sliced, the supply transport, the raiders, the battle, desperate and bloody, and the wound, the searing agony, the darkness rising up to claim him. What happened?" Ethan managed, his brow furrowing. "How did we—" "The Nexus," Sarah said softly. "They intercepted the transport's distress beacon. Arrived just in time to drive off the raiders and get us to safety." She stroked his hair, wonder and gratitude shining in her eyes. "They saved us, Ethan." "Saved you." Ethan stared at her, hardly daring to believe. We're safe? It's over? Sarah smiled, a watery expression breaking across her face. It's over. We made it. Thanks to you, your bravery, your strength. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. You saved me, Ethan Cross. In every way a person can be saved. Emotions swelled in Ethan's chest, too vast, too profound for words. He reached up with a trembling hand, cupping Sarah's cheek, marveling at the miracle of her, warm and real and alive in his arms. I love you, he whispered, the truth of it ringing in his bones. I love you, Sarah. A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek, glittering like a fallen star. I love you too, she breathed, more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the worlds that ever were or will be. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and achingly tender, a kiss that held the promise of forever, of a future stretching out before them, bright and boundless and beautiful. They had fought the odds, had defied the very laws of the universe to find each other, to hold on to each other, a miner's son and an alien warrior, two lost souls who had found home in the vastness of space. Their story was just beginning, a tale that would be told across the stars, whispered in the halls of power and in the hearths of the humble, a legend of love and courage, of hope and defiance in the face of impossible odds. The legend of Ethan and Sarah, the lovers who rewrote the stars and changed the face of the galaxy forever. And as Ethan held Sarah close, as he breathed in the scent of her, the warmth of her, he knew that no matter what the future held, no matter what challenges or dangers lay ahead, they would face it together. Always together. For they were bound by something stronger than gravity, more enduring than the ages. They were bound by love, and in the end, that was the most powerful force in the universe, the force that would carry them to the stars and beyond,